Hello, my name's Jamie Taylor and I'm a data and AI specialist at Microsoft, and I'm very pleased you've joined us today for this Microsoft and Adatis webinar focused on data sharing in the insurance and investment sector. Now, I'm sure many of you will have seen this announcement at the end of last year, in which the London Stock Exchange Group unveiled a 10-year partnership with Microsoft. And whilst we all may associate LSEG with major exchanges like FTSE Russell and with the FTSE Index, actually a huge part of their business is about harvesting financial market data, normalising it and reselling it to the capital market sector, retail banks and insurance companies. Now, under the new venture, LSEG's data platform and other key technology components will migrate into Microsoft's cloud environment, and LSEG's data and analytics capabilities will integrate with certain Microsoft applications. So this will enable us to jointly introduce innovative new analytics services to the market. Ultimately, the goal here then is to transform how market participants interact with capital markets across a broad range of asset classes. And the interesting thing is that some of the key components of this joint LSEG Microsoft platform, which will enable this market transformation, are the data sharing and data governance capabilities, which we're going to talk about today. And we see a very similar opportunity for positive market change in the insurance and investment sectors, with secure and compliant data sharing both within and between organisations, enabling significant efficiency gains in what is an increasingly digitised market. So to talk to you about this topic in more detail today, we have three speakers with in-depth knowledge and experience who will cover the key industry, solution and business change themes for us. Firstly, we have James Harrison, who is Microsoft's industry advisor for insurance in the UK. James's role is to act as an industry architect and advisor for transformation and enablement in the sector, where he brings to bear his long career working with financial services companies, including Lloyd's of London carriers, to enable technology and business change. Next, we have Jubair Patel, who is our lead architect at Microsoft for data governance products. He's led data architecture and platform design in the financial services industry for 15 years and is also co-chair of the Cloud Data Management Capabilities Industry Working Group. And last but not least, we have Gunter Richter, who is head of business consulting at Microsoft partner Adatis. Gunter helps organizations improve their performance through business change, technology and coaching. He's got over 25 years experience in strategy, business systems and data, with a deep understanding of both the organization and technology fields. So over to you, James.
Thank you and welcome. James Harrison, I'm the industry advisor for insurance and investments for Microsoft UK. So when we look at Lloyd's of London and the wider London markets, this is really the world's largest insurance market, and it contributes over 5% of the UK's GDP. Lloyd's of London, the London markets, still uphold the original principles applied and approach to enabling their customers within the transfer of risk. And the collaboration approach between brokers and carriers, being able to subscribe to large complex risks to enable a customer, is as true today as it was 300 years ago. And really championed by Lloyd's. We have the Lloyd's London market modernisation is firmly on the agenda, and the benefits of London market modernisation are obvious. You know, a standard data capture approach, starting with the broker at the beginning of the process. You know, the promise of straight through processing, greater certainty within the risks placed, improved risk management, enhanced data sets, you know, throughout the life cycle of placing of the risks. This idea of the data sets being infused as they progress through the process, you know, ultimately driving more business to London markets, you know, increased capacity, more business, reducing the complexity and the cost associated with that, and really the complexity and the risk of doing business. And really that aligns with the Microsoft vision of empowering every person and an organization on the planet to do more. So really, what does that mean within the London market's modernization? So it's doing more. It's getting that principle of driving more business to the London markets, and therefore getting more coverage for people. And it's also about really doing more with less. If you're in an organization, you can't keep hiring people. You've got expertise, and I think it's about really enabling those people to be more productive, be those sort of brokers or underwriters or actuaries or risk modelers that are involved in the process to be more productive. Data sharing amongst Lloyd's participants is key to the modernisation of the market, built on the key principles that Lloyd's has outlined. But really, we need to do this within a lens of identity and security. It's all about removing the barriers to doing business, and that's both internally within a company but externally as well. So that principle of collaborating on the risk. You have a broker that has to have multiple carriers, and they all need to share information, and as I said, sort of like securely. So being able to share your large data sets directly with the participants has got to be a goal of the modernisation, rather than the way it's done today of passing documents and uploading databases. So in terms of the modernisation, the straight through processing, and being able to do that securely, that principle of data sharing and enrichment has to be embraced by all the participants. Thank you. On to Jabir.
Hi all, my name is Jabir Patel and I'm the lead architect for data governance products here at Microsoft. What I wanted to do today was show you a little bit about our governed data sharing approach, how you can use a data catalog to understand what's in your data estate, how you should be using data within your data estate, and then how you can safely and securely share or access data within the estate. And a lot of what we're doing in Microsoft Purview, this particular product, as a catalog, works both internally within your organization and should soon work externally with partners as well that are looking to share data both within and externally within your organization. So the first thing I want to talk through is what is our approach here to data cataloging. So we have 3 layers to our data catalog platform. The first is an ability to scan underlying data sources, whether your data lives on premise or in the cloud, or in a number of SaaS or PaaS products, and pull in the definition of what that data is, what it means, and what it looks like into your data catalog. And then within our data map, which is an underlying data store that connects all of your data within your estate to the way we should be able to manage that data using policies, we then expose it through these applications like the data catalog, the data sharing capabilities, the data quality capabilities, and a number of other applications that we're building on top of the data catalog experience. And all of this seamlessly integrates into your Azure data estate and also your Microsoft 365 estate as well when it comes to OneDrive, SharePoint, Exchange, and email. So I want to quickly go into the tool and explain how this works in real time. So yeah, I'm quickly going to share a screen here. And the first thing I want to show is what the actual catalog looks like. So this is the front page of the catalog. And if I'm a user of a catalog and I'm actually searching for data in my estate, I want to find any form of data, the catalog will give you the ability to search on top of the data sets and then start seeing core information. And a number of bits of information that you can see here include what's the actual table or file within the data lake that I'm looking for. And then when I look at the particular file, I get to see a lot more information, for example, about where this data is owned, what region it's stored in, and other information around how I can use the data if I wanted to. And this is just a starting point around information that will be shown to you about this particular asset and the data you're looking to use. you'll see a lot more information such as the schema, the lineage, additional information about ownership, and you'll also be able to request access either for yourself or for an API or another group or an account access control list, and a lot of flexibility here in how you can access the data. So if I am going to request access for myself, I can go ahead and I can send off a data access request, which triggers an automated workflow that will go to the right approval state, and once approved, will automatically grant me access to this data. That's one way I can access this data in a safe and governed manner. The other, if I'm an owner of this data, I can share this data either internally within the organization or externally outside the organization by defining where the data exists, determining the path for actually where the data is going to go. So in this case, this is employee share. Define who the data is going to go to. In this case, I'm going to share with a colleague of mine. And I can also set an expiration date, which the date and this particular data share will be expired on. So what this means is that once the recipient receives the data, they're able to map the data onto their own Azure estate and start seeing and using the data exactly as it resides in my data estate. So they're seeing what we call an in-place data share. The data isn't physically moving anywhere. They're able to see and use the data as it resides in my environment almost in real time. By triggering this data share, I can now share the data safely and securely with an expiration date to anyone within or outside of my organization, as long as they have an Azure tenant. Those are two of the many ways in which we can share and safely access data within the Azure estate using the Purview Data Catalog.
Great, Julia. Thanks for that. Thanks for that demonstration. I will share my screen now, and we can get kicked off with the rest of the presentation. Bear with me. Right, so what's important to note, I think, is that in addition to the data sharing that Jubez talked about, he alluded to many other features that exist as part of the Purview product, and I'm going to touch on some of those. And before that, also start thinking about what, in addition to some of the technology aspects, do we need to start thinking about when we want to implement a data governance tool such as Purview, or in fact, where we want to start sharing data and information with third party and possibly even external parties. So I'm going to start off with a what may be a controversial statement. I think you've often heard the analogy that data is the new oil, and I'm really wanting to disagree with this, and that's for a few reasons. I think, you know, there'll be a point in time where we run out of oil, but we're not going to run out of data. If anything, we're going to, you know, find we have more and more data. We have plans in place to reduce our dependency on oil, but we're becoming more and more dependent on data as we create more data and as our businesses become more complex. And I think, you know, we don't really have an alternative to fossil fuel at the moment. Sorry, we do have alternative to fossil fuels, but we don't really have an alternative to data as we've seen. And then also, oil is a commodity and data is an asset. And I think that last statement is one that we really need to focus on, because if we want to treat data as an asset, or we want to get value from data, be it value now or value in the future, as with any asset, we need to be able to treat that data as an asset. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next few slides. So I did say that in addition to the technology, we need to start thinking about some other aspects. And as we go through these following slides, you'll see that I'll draw on some of the additional functionality that Purview presents in addition to data sharing, but also what are the other things we need to consider, like processes, like roles and responsibilities, and those sorts of things. But before we get into that, I just wanted to have a few moments to talk about what good data governance looks like. And because if we can govern our data well, we manage it as an asset, and we can get value from that data. So in terms of what good governance looks like, data governance, there's 7 key questions that we need to answer. And what I'm going to be doing is using an analogy as we go through this topic. So I think first and foremost, we need to understand what the business context is of our data. So certainly in some of the examples that James shared, those examples were being drawn out. And we need to make sure that everyone understands the business context of this data. Why are we keeping the data? So what is that value that we ultimately want to leverage from that data? Secondly, we need to think about where this data is stored. So for example, if we think about any asset at a point in time, if we have an insured vehicle, for example, where is that asset at any point in time? Who has control of that asset? And in the same way, we need to understand where is our data stored at any point in time. We need to be able to answer the question what the data looks like. So in the same instance, we'd have an asset, be it some form of vehicle, what are the attributes around it? If it's a car, a rental car, what color is it? What's the engine capacity? What's the VIN? All of those sorts of things that describe that asset. And in the same way, we need to be able to describe our data. And this also adds to the first point around understanding the business context. Next, we need to understand how this data is stored. And I guess in some of the, when you delve a little more into Purview, you'll see some of the bits that Jubei shared as well. You can start seeing where that data is stored. So you'll see the different storage mechanisms, be they a structured database or be they some form of a file type or container type storage. It's really helpful to understand how that data is stored, because this then helps us manage it more effectively, whether it's cost reduction or whether it's understanding the life cycle of that data. This is very important. Next, we need to be able to answer the question of how much. So particularly if we are sharing data, what is that volume of data we're sharing? What the volume of data that we have overall, and how do we best manage that volume of data? Do we think that the data as it stands in a certain point or a certain form is too voluminous to share? Do we need to aggregate that data at all? What does that volume of data look like? Next, we need to understand when that data was created and how long we're going to be retaining it for. So when we think about the life cycle of data, there comes a point in time where we will need to refer to or adhere to some retention policy, be it related to GDPR or the DPA 2018. And if we don't know when this data was created and we don't know how long it's to be kept for, we're going to lose control of that data. In the same way, we need to think about an asset. When has that asset reached the end of its reasonable lifetime? When is that asset costing more than the value it's delivering? It's at that point we need to start thinking about retiring the asset. And in the same way, we need to approach data. Finally, then, we need to be able to answer who. And this is key. So in the example that Jubei shared with you in the demonstration, he essentially shared a domain or a portion of the data with a colleague. So this becomes key to understand, who owns the data currently, who gives approval in terms of what can and can't be done with the data. If I share that data, who has control over it, who effectively becomes a processor of the data. So it's not as simple as thinking our data is just in a structured data source or perhaps some file storage somewhere. We need to know a little bit more about, who has access to it and where that data is going and how long those people will have access to it. So we think if you answer these 7 questions correctly, you'll get a good handle on data governance. It'll really assist you with your data sharing capability and, in fact, data governance journey. The next bit of the slide really just talks about then some of the concepts that Jubei had gone through, that Purview as a product provides. So it's not only the data sharing capability. We often find that customers are driven adopting Microsoft Purview because of the business glossary capability, the general data cataloging capability, data lineage, data metadata management, all of these sorts of things. So I've listed out a few there, and they also talk to things like your organizational structure. So how do you effectively implement a data governance program and the roles and responsibilities that go along with that? What are the sorts of policies you need to have in place? So again, drawing back on the data sharing example, what Joubert demonstrated was the mechanism for data sharing, but actually how is that all governed from a policy perspective? What is acceptable and what is not acceptable? Who makes those calls? How long is the data shared for? And that we all need to have driven by some form of policy. As we used the example in the last question around retention, the second last question, what is that data retention schedule? What is that data retention policy? Data quality, if we're sharing data and we understand we're going to be getting value or someone else will be getting value from it, how certain are we that that data is of a high quality, that it has high integrity? So these are all the things that we can drive from a policy perspective, but kind of work them through down to an implementation in a tool like Microsoft Purview. So hopefully that's drawn out a little bit more about what you would need to consider in addition to just the technology, but also then thinking about what else Purview can do for you in addition to a very small set of the functionality that Joubert demonstrated. So it's easier said than done when we look at answering the 7 questions. And the next bit I want to talk about where organizations tend to get stuck in implementing these sorts of things, be it a technology or be it a data governance program or capability. So you'll see on the left, very simply, we've got on the y-axis, a level of maturity or level of adoption, and on the x-axis, we've got time. Now, I'm going to show you some key events where we tend to work with organizations when they get stuck on their data governance journey. It's not to say that these are all kind of sequential. Every organization is difficult, but hopefully this highlights some key bits that you will need to look out for. So the first one is really getting started. Data governance can be a really meaty topic. It's complex. It's sometimes seen as an afterthought. We tend to get excited by, what are the sort of business outcomes we're looking for from either reporting or analytics or data sharing, monetization of our data. And we sometimes tend to think about governance afterwards. So getting started is often a struggle for organizations. It's just such a vast domain and vast discipline. So what we've done is we've put together what we call the Data Governance Quick Start with Microsoft Purview. I'll share a little bit more about this in the slide that follows this. The next point that organizations, once they've made that start, is that they sometimes struggle to define exactly what their policies are going to be, what their approach will be to data governance, be it the technology aspects, be it the people process, so the roles and responsibilities, or just sort of general processes and policies. So we put together a data governance framework. It's aligned to the Dharma DM framework. So I think if you're familiar with the broad concepts of data management, looking at our framework will resonate. It's really an easy way to get started thinking about what those big ticket items are that you'll need to tick off to implement a reasonable level of data governance. The next hurdle that organizations face is then really embedding what it is they've defined. So it's easy enough saying we need data stewards, we need data owners, these are the roles or the responsibilities of each of those. These are the forums that we need to have constituted in our organization, be it a working group or a steering committee or a community of practice, whatever it is. How do we make those actual changes? How do we take that plan from a plan on a piece of paper or several slides or whatever to reality? And as you'd expect, it's through projects, several projects, but also thinking about how you're going to bring the business on that journey with you. And that's where we use the Adatis business change enablement approach. And it's essentially bringing people on the journey with you as you go through those stages, broadly making people aware of the change that's coming. So, for example, if you're implementing some form of data sharing, people need to be aware of it because there are stakeholders involved who might not be the recipients of the benefits of the data sharing. generating that level of awareness, then having people create the desire within people to then be part of that change. Once you create that desire, it's then about imparting the knowledge or delivering the knowledge they need, whether it's becoming familiar with policies or processes, or whether it's around the functional aspects of data sharing in Purview. Having those people then translate their knowledge into ability, and then finally reinforcing the reason why they've invested in this change with the organization. So that's our business change enablement approach, really is people focused, because ultimately it's going to be people that kind of make or break your data sharing or data governance initiatives. And then finally, this is more a point to note, I think. What we never suggest is a set and forget approach to data governance and data sharing. It's something that you constantly need to measure the performance of the success, draw lessons from how you're doing, and continually adjust your approach, whether it's broad data governance or whether it's your data sharing approach, and kind of send it through that loop again. So don't set and forget. Make sure you constantly come back and you measure, learn, and adjust to get the best value out of your people, processes, and technologies that you invest in. Right, then I did mention a little more information around the data governance quick start for financial services. So there's a lot more information available on our website. This is just to highlight the sort of key approach that we take to get organizations up and running quickly. It's essentially a 10-day engagement where we focus on a area such as data sharing, where we focus on an area, a focused area of your data, so not the whole data estate, as we've highlighted in point 2. There's some work to be done around addressing any dependencies on Azure, be that resources that might need to be made available, or any sort of architectural items that you need to go through within your organization. It's building out that pilot of Purview, focusing on the challenge we've identified, and then it's playing back and putting together some recommendations to take that pilot and build on it to really flesh out your data governance capability and program. So if you would like more information, please feel free to take a look at our website. There's a lot more content on there talking about the technologies that we help with, and some of the services we provide around data governance and data strategy. Feel free to get in touch with our inquiries email address there, and possibly book in a free introduction session either with myself or one of my colleagues, or just send through any general inquiries to the email address that we've shared out there. So in closing, I'd just like to thank you for sharing your time with us today. I know people's diaries are busy and we all have a lot of screen time with Teams and Zoom type meetings. So thank you for sharing your time with us. We've enjoyed talking to you.